Hello, everyone, and welcome to the TDWI webinar program. I'm Andrew Miller, and I'll be your moderator. For today's program, we're going to talk about, is your organization ready for generative AI? And our sponsors today are Impetus. For our presentations today, we'll hear first from James Kabelis with TDWI. And after Jim speaks, we'll be joined by Ravi Shankar Rao Vahabjosila with Impetus and Helen Shing with AWS for a panel discussion. Before I turn over the time to our speakers, I'd like to go over a few basics with everyone. Today's webinar will be about an hour long, and at the end of their presentations, our speakers will host a question and answer period. So if at any time during these presentations you'd like to submit a question, just use the Ask a Question area on your screen to type in your question. If you have any technical difficulties during the webinar, you can click on the Help area located below the slide window, and you'll receive technical assistance. If you'd like to discuss this webinar on Twitter with fellow attendees, just include the hashtag TDWI in your tweets. Also, if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, please locate the resource window to download the PDF. Finally, we are recording today's event and we'll be emailing you a link to an archived version so you can view the presentation again later, or if you'd like to share with a colleague. Again, today we're going to be discussing, is your organization ready for generative AI? And our first speaker is James Kabelis, the Senior Director of Research for Data Management at TDWI. Jim is a veteran thought leader, industry analyst, consultant, author, and speaker on analytics and data management. And over the past 3 decades, Jim has held analyst positions at Futurum Research, Wikibon, Forrester Research, Current Analysis, and the Burton Group. He also served as Senior Program Director for Product Marketing for Big Data Analytics for IBM, where he was both a subject matter expert and a strategist on thought leadership and content marketing programs targeted at the data science community. At TDWI, Jim focuses on data management, which encompasses database platforms, data governance, data integration, master data management, data ops pipelines, and more. Welcome, Jim. And with that, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a good day wherever you happen to be. So, is your organization ready for generative AI? Generative AI has been a huge focus of enterprises the world over, and of course, the solution provider community for much of the last year, but it's a well-established area of technology that I, as an analyst, have been following for many years, and the pace of change in generative AI in just the past year or two has grown considerably. It's sped up. And what we'll start off with is a bit of level setting. What is generative AI? How does it relate to other things you've been hearing about, like language models? And what do you need to do to ready your organization to take advantage of the potential of generative AI in a broad range of applications? Well, you can make yourselves ready for generative AI, high quality generative AI, if you make the necessary technological investments. And we have 2 solution providers on the roundtable panel today who will discuss what you need to invest in to lay down the foundation for taking advantage of this technology. But you also need to evolve your organizations, your skill sets, the way you manage your data and machine learning pipelines, as well as you need to evolve your both data governance and model governance practices to effectively manage the risks of generative AI. And we're hearing a lot about the risks in the popular press, but also in the trade press, and they're very real. And the potential for greater regulation and laws to address these is very real as well. So you need to understand what that's all about, and to adjust your enterprise strategies accordingly. So we'll move to, first of all, some level setting. Really, what is generative AI? And what you need to know is that the word generative in this phrase refers to the ability of artificial intelligence to generate content based on patterns that it detects, the AI detects in that content, in the training data that's used to build generative AI applications. So generative versus really analytical AI, the core of AI, which is all about finding those patterns. Generative AI takes the patterns that are distilled from data and uses that to generate text, image, music, lots of other kinds of content. So really there are 3 core concepts you need to understand here. There's generative AI, which I've just given you a high-level definition of. There's large language models, and there's something called foundation models, and they overlap considerably. So I'm going to skip through build and get to really start in the lower right here. Generative AI is systems that leverage neural network artificial intelligence models, foundation models, and task-specific models, and I'll define that distinction in just a moment, that leverage artificial intelligence statistical models to algorithmically auto-generate text, image, video, audio, and other output modalities. The so-called deep fake technology, video and image technology, leverages generative AI at its very core. And it's used for a lot of purposes. Many of them are quite useful for creators, the creative economy. So that's what generative AI is. Large language models are a subset of generative AI models. And what they do is they address natural language processing use cases where you input textual prompts. Think of prompts as like a nouveau type of query, where you input a prompt such as, write me a blog on the topic of the 19th century English literature. And then it auto-generates, the large language model auto-generates a textual output, an article or just a paragraph or whatever it is that responds to that prompt. So, you can use larger language models to write full articles, blogs, movie scripts, and so forth. And so foundation models. A foundation model refers to any artificial intelligence model, any neural network-based model that is easily adaptable from its core use for which it's been built and trained to other use cases that are adjacent to that initial use case through such things as fine-tuning, training it with domain-specific data like your own proprietary enterprise data, training the model with a new knowledge source to make the model less likely to generate what are often called hallucinations, to adjust the weights, the neural network weights in the model. So a foundation model is, for example, a large language model that maybe was built to translate text from English to French and can be fine-tuned to translate from English to other languages, maybe other Indo-European languages, maybe Swahili, maybe Bahasa Indonesia or whatever. So foundation models are easily adaptable to new purposes. In generative AI, many applications leverage foundation models, a growing range of them. They can do an amazing range of things in terms of building ever more real life, lifelike image, video, music, and other output modalities. So generative AI, once again, is about generating content based on the statistical patterns that AI detects in training data. So what are the use cases of generative AI? I've begun to sketch them out. Natural language processing. It's understanding text or spoken words, and then being able to then generate text, audio clips, and whatnot that conforms to the statistical patterns found in that natural language text base or content database. Robotics and edge. Generative AI is being used to develop, to generate physical objects in manufacturing settings, in 3D printers and the like. So we're seeing the technology being adapted for a broad range of real world, hard outputs that often the foundation models might have parameters that reflect the laws of physics and whatnot. So a lot of exciting things are going on with the use of this technology in robotics applications, edge devices, the Internet of Things. Vision and imaging. A fair number of large language models have been trained on both text databases and on image databases, like images and their captions, to be able to take textual prompts such as draw me a picture of a cat with 3 heads that is driving a Mercedes-Benz. And it can take that crazy prompt and generate an image that is basically a response to that prompt, and may be doing so in a way that's highly imaginative and in a way that might develop a range of images that respond to that prompt. So you can see the potential for using this generative AI technology in animation, in graphic illustration. Hollywood has definitely been using and exploring use of this technology. As we probably, if we read the headlines, we're noticing that there's a bit of controversy there. But the power of generative AI is that it can do an amazing number of creative things that we used to have to rely on manual human effort to achieve. It can automate them. Interaction and assistance, the natural language processing capabilities of generative AI are at the core of chatbots, and chatbots are increasingly in line to many online applications, call centers, multi-channel environments where you're interacting with a chatbot and it's giving you the kind of assistance that in the past we've relied on human beings sitting at monitors looking up databases to provide. And of course, the chatbots are inside our mobile applications and whatnot. One of this leverages large language models that can, in many ways, have aced the imitation game, Alan Turing's imitation game, can respond as lifelike and with as much authority by leveraging a huge database of content as humans have in the past, or can augment the productivity of human customer service reps and the like. Audio and music. Generative AI has been used to generate music and audio clips for a number of years. And in fact, a fair amount of what we're starting to hear in terms of popular music is artists who are using some of these technologies then to supplement what they're composing, through the old manual, sit at the keyboard and press the keys techniques. So we're seeing a lot of use of generative AI in building out audio clips and so forth. So in reasoning and cognition, generative AI applications are being used to take tests. And increasingly what we're finding is that this is a great way of gauging the degree of intelligence that's built into generative AI, to the extent that a generative AI application can ace a test, like a college level test in some area, as well as 90% of actual human students, shows that, wow, we're actually able to use this technology to build super intelligent bots now that can do a lot of amazing things. So that clearly, if you're reading what's going on in this field in R&D, these things are real. What I'm describing, none of these are futuristic. These are happening now, and generative AI is at the core of it. Of course, that raises a lot of challenges for enterprises that are trying to ready for this new era, which is fast upon us. The potential for obsolescence. Generative AI is still very much a bleeding edge technology that's come along fairly quickly in terms of commercialization. There's always the risks of obsolescence. Innovations are accelerating. So any investments you make early on in these, in the history of generative AI there's a threat that they might become obsolete before long, because the technology is changing very fast. And of course, your solution providers are making every effort to continue to upgrade their technology to make it more sophisticated. So, of course, you have to be aware that the early adopters, you might be able to achieve a great degree of benefit from deployment of generative AI, but you're going to have to keep on churning your platforms and tools and practices fairly quickly to stay up with the state of the art as it evolves. Complexity. Generative AI is a complex set of technologies in terms of the stack of technologies and cloud services and tools that one needs to develop, to of course, acquire and develop and install and manage and train and whatnot. So, the complexity, of the technology is a bit of a barrier in terms of the adoption curve for this technology. Now, you can go with a SaaS-based generative AI offering from any number of companies, and my panelists will discuss what's out there. But keep in mind that this is, so if you're just new to this technology, the learning curve, just in terms of what all the pieces are that you need to put together, can be significant. The scale, generative AI, the large language models, and these vast neural networks are huge and growing at a rate of around 10 times every year. In terms of they're among the largest and most powerful neural networks on the planet. And they consume a great amount of resources in terms of cloud computing, CPU, GPU, memory, bandwidth, storage, and the like. So keep in mind that the scale of generative AI is considerable. The cost, they're hugely resource intensive. Hence, generative AI systems are costly in terms of the resource requirements on the hardware side. And growing ever more so, especially as they're called upon to do more sophisticated things, but also as you build in more of the guardrails to prevent toxic outputs and the like from coming out of generative AI systems. Keep in mind that the resource requirements will grow. Of course, these are immature technology, immature in the sense that the generative AI is new, and so commercial solutions, they're growing less sparse every day and less immature every day, as we see pretty much every cloud vendor and most data science tool vendors come out with ever more sophisticated technology. But keep in mind, we're early on in the history of generative AI, so it'll take a few years for this space to settle down into the next plateau. Skills. The skills needed to build and run and train and manage generative AI are in short supply as everybody ramps up the learning curve. I'm assuming that many people listening into this webinar are just trying to get up to speed and teach themselves on what's needed. How does this change the state of the art in terms of data science? And what is prompt engineering, something you're probably hearing more about, and playing with yourselves. So skills, they're still in short supply, and you're not going to find a lot of people on the market who have a lot of experience with generative AI. Everybody's pretty new to this. The risks. We're hearing about, of course, the cultural, business, and technical risks, things like deep fakes that are used for fraudulent activities and or the potential thereof associated with generative AI. And those are very real. And organizations are building guardrails and controls into their data governance, their model governance, and other processes to mitigate those risks. But the risks are very much there. Toxic outputs, clearly, you can offend people, you can lose customers, you can run afoul of the law depending on where you're operating. So obviously you need to be very aware of all those. And the calls for regulatory and legal scrutiny of generative AI will continue to grow, as we hear everywhere all the time. Various industry initiatives and government initiatives, regulations, and laws are being passed or contemplated or discussed to control this technology, which clearly the pace of the demands to institute these laws continues to accelerate, because the value of this technology is very much clear and present, but also the risks in terms of generating hallucinatory, as it were, or toxic outputs from generative AI are very much real. Enterprises know that, so you need to brace yourself there, and really build the skills and controls into your processes for building and training and deploying AI generally. Now I'm going to hand back to Andrew, and he can introduce our panelists.
Thank you very much, Jim. Just a quick reminder to our audience that if you have a question, you can enter it at any time in the Ask a Question window. We will be answering audience questions in the final portion of our program. This does, of course, bring me to our guest speakers today, and our first speaker is Ravi Shankar Rao Vahajosala with Impetus. Ravi leads the data science practice at Impetus, where he has contributed extensively to various AI and ML initiatives and delivered successful data science engagements for several customers. Ravi has over 2 decades of experience working with data modeling and simulation and machine learning in engineering design, manufacturing, energy, aerospace, life sciences, healthcare, and other areas. Our next speaker is Helen Shing with AWS. Helen leads the worldwide data analytics partner go-to-market for the Americas and global public sector at AWS. She started her career at Merck as a program analyst and enjoyed a 15-year career at Oracle and left as a senior director of partner solutions in North America sales. She is passionate about education, social impact, and data-led transformation, and has been at the forefront of the Data for Good effort, engaging public and private partnerships, supporting veterans, promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion, and social welfare. She's also the chairwoman of the board of the Nellie Berman Classical Music Institute. Welcome to both Ravi and Helen. And with that, I will hand it back to you now, Jim, for the panel discussion.
Great. It's wonderful to have both of you here. So, I started off with my own long-winded discussion of what is generative AI, but we want to hear our audience what you think. What is generative AI? Broadly or specifically? Either of you can start here. Who would like to take the first stab at defining it?
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Andrew. Really pleasure to be here with you and Helen. So really appreciate the opportunity to talk about generative AI and how enterprises can benefit and gain value from this emerging technology, right? So, Jim, you covered a lot of ground in terms of generative AI in your introduction. Really appreciate that. So I would just add just a few things there. I think you talked about foundation models and large language models, which is very true. So this industry has been growing by on a day-to-day basis, pretty much. A lot of things happening at a very rapid pace. But the core of the whole generative AI started, I would say, with language models, because that's where most of the innovation initially happened with the transformer architecture. If you can go back to 2017, when the first paper from Google was released, talking about attention is all you need. So that unleashed the kind of innovation in the space, and it was applied to language to understand language. And a language model is nothing but a large, deep learning. Think of many layers of these transformer blocks, which kind of ingest all this language data. Could be text from Wikipedia, could be other sources, and try to predict what your next word is, and sequentially and iteratively keep improving on that. It's a probabilistic way of identifying things, and then we realize that this can be tweaked to additional, and this is the core of the foundation models. That's where they started, and subsequently it also started the realization that it could also kind of apply to other kinds of data. Could be audio, video, music, images. So a lot of innovation was initiated, and that's the differentiation in terms of the foundation models that enable a lot of this, and how you can take all of those foundation models. They're private ones, and they're also now open source ones to kind of build on, and you can fine tune them, like Jim spoke about, and kind of build your own models for your own specific purpose. So this is going to touch upon many areas. It could be, even today, it's being used to improve productivity and to conversational AI and like text summarization, code generation, a lot of applications. Definitely, I look forward to all the applications that will be coming out in near future. And like I said, this is an exponential growth we're seeing. It's a transformative technology of this decade, and probably we'll see more of it happening soon.
Great. Helen, would you like to add something to what Ravi has said? Helen, are you on mute?
Oh, sorry. Yes. I think Ravi shared that really well. And just to build on what you shared as well in terms of some examples and use cases, the way that I see it is that it kind of coming into different buckets. Right, from visualization perspective, the visual application, the imaging, transformation, generation is one of the really exciting area. And the other area is really audio, right? Text to speech, speech to speech, and so on. And the third piece is really code-based application, right? And there are a lot of opportunities right now to improve productivity of developers for code generation. And the last I want to talk about is we have a lot of industry applications, whether it's from the healthcare. I was trained as a chemist and started my career at Merck, right, in really trying to use genetic technology to change the world. What's really exciting is that with generative AI, we can streamline that drug discovery process and to bring that cure to the world a lot faster. It's super exciting to think about what not just what's the art of possible, but also what will be the art of impossible with generative AI. And then think about financial services. How do you really personalize those financial advisory, from media? How do you really curate the content? There are endless use cases. So I would say the time is ripe. It's a tipping point, very exciting point. And I'm so excited about this topic also because it's timely, to your point earlier. And I think Ravi alluded to that. There's so much to do to get ready for it.
What you said about chemistry is, generative AI is being used, as you know, to generate molecular configurations and test those generated configurations in a virtual environment as a way of speeding up, as you said, the discovery process for different pharmaceuticals, for example, that might be useful for particular illnesses. So yeah, clearly there's a lot of real world applications, save lives and so forth, improve our quality of life. Great, so I'm gonna move to the next question. Who is adopting generative AI? And I think, Helen, you began to answer that. Which one of you would like to start on this? Who's adopting in terms of industries? What particular roles within organizations are latching on to generative AI? Is it marketing people? Is it customer service people? The people who deploy chatbots? Or is it somebody else?
Yeah, it's interesting, right, Jim? Sorry, I just jumped in. But it is definitely an area that's exciting, partly because we've seen significant interest since the launch of ChatGPT. I mean, generative AI in some sense and form was there prior to that. You can go back to the almost like generative adversarial networks era, which was not an era, but just of like a few years ago. But the transformative nature is so much that now we're talking about generative AI in a much bigger sense and broader in applicability. So like you said, marketing and sales is probably where we're seeing a lot of adoption right now, partly because it facilitates a lot of automation of processes and kind of helping these businesses kind of reach out to their prospects, customers, and make better chatbots and conversational agents and voice bots, all of that. But like you also alluded to, and Helen spoke about, there's a bigger universe of applications. And coming from my life sciences and background myself, healthcare and drug design, all of that is very, very interesting to me. In fact, the innovation started also partly because of AlphaFold, which is a algorithm that was created to kind of predict the 3D structure of a protein. Essentially, it's a sequence of amino acids, but it's a linear sequence, and it's a very hard problem. It's been a very hard problem for many, many years and decades. And the solution that was created essentially took this capability and gave you a very close potential 3D structure for the protein, and that's very, very useful for drug design and everything. So those are the kind of long-term applications I see also evolving down the road, like product design and many things. For now, in fact, McKinsey ran a survey of a lot of participants recently, and you can look that up on McKinsey's website itself. So they're calling 2023 as a generative AI's breakout year. The reason for that is the amount of penetration of the technology in many, many segments, and irrespective of which industry you look at, they're all looking at generative AI as a capability they want to adopt and build new things. And in fact, all the way from engineers who are playing with this techie people, all the way to C-suite executives are all using ChatGPT or some variant of that in their almost daily activities and things of the nature. So I see a lot of potential for adoption, and there's a lot of things in I can say manufacturing, you can say healthcare, supply chain, and you name it, and you'll find applications and use cases. So it's starting at a very place where it's easy to adopt, like marketing, sales, where you're generating content or creating marketing campaigns of that sort. But it's going to have a far-reaching impact. Sorry, that was a long-winded.
Sure, no, that's great. Helen, your thoughts? Who's adopting generative AI, or who's likely to? Helen, do we have you?
Oh
yeah. You're off mute now. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so I think Ravi summarized it really well, and I want to kind of build on a few things. And one of that is really to think about why we do what we do. I would say everything starts with a business strategy, right? If there's a business outcome anybody is looking for, generative AI is at age and time that's ripe to really adopt to deliver that business outcome. In the meantime, I would say that as much as we think about business strategy, it has to really combine with a data strategy. And those combined will actually get you there. It's great to think about it, but it's also important to think about how do you prioritize that. So the answer is that everybody is trying to and should be thinking about adopting generative AI. The question is to really think through what is the readiness and what will be the path to get there.
Right, great. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. What are the principal applications of generative AI? All of us have discussed this, but I'll just lay the question out there. What are the core areas where generative AI is changing our life right now? Is it chatbots like ChatGPT, or is it something else that we haven't really discussed yet on this call?
I'll take a stab at it, and I would love to hear Ravi's input. I think it's everywhere. It's all aspects of our lives. But from what I see, there are three areas that's probably more relevant than anything else. Number one is really the customer experience. Whether you're a citizen working with the government, or you're a customer, or you're an employee, right? ChatGPT is really part of the equation, and there's everything else that matters. The second place where I see is operation. How do you streamline operation? For example, at Amazon, we've been using AI, machine learning for a very, very long time. Actually, it's part of our DNA. If you think about e-commerce recommendation, and if you think about how we really manage the warehouse, to scale operation, to manage demand, these are the two areas where I see a huge impact. The third area is really to reduce cost and waste and duplication. Think about one of the tools that we recently released is Code Whisper, with data that indicates it reduces 30% of developers' time to just write code, so they can focus on more important aspects of what they're trying to achieve rather than getting stuck with writing code. So I would say the three areas that come to mind.
Yeah, automated code generation is very much, I'm glad you keyed in on that, a core application. We're at TDWI, our research is uncovering lots of interest in that, including using generative AI to build fairly complex queries for querying databases. Ravi, your thoughts. What are the principal applications of generative AI here and now, and going forward, what will be the primary areas where this technology will be employed in the business world?
Yeah, I think Helen covered this very well, and you have touched upon this also. So I feel there are a lot of things that are developing, and every business unit is looking at it, and they need to also kind of see what is feasible with the data and the technology investments. But I think pretty much the entire business will transform in terms of using these technologies. And if I can talk to a few particular ones, I think there are a lot of applications I would think in terms of wherever you have a way to bring creativity, kind of create new content. That's where it would immediately have a benefit. It could be in terms of product design. It could be in terms of, even people are writing novels with ChatGPT and doing lots of things. So there are a lot of interesting applications. One more piece I also want to kind of allude to is, and what started a lot of this investment in GPUs, right, which kind of triggered the whole, AI revolution, and that is gaming. And gaming is really adopting generative AI at a rapid pace, and you'll see a lot of new capabilities being built into games, and not because anything. It's just increases the experience for users, and some of those capabilities will kind of feed into the next version of whatever they're is kind of being planned for metaverse or whatever. That's still far away, but you can see a lot of they're playing into that overall landscape.
Yeah, for sure. I've been seeing a lot of uptake of generative AI in media and entertainment generally, and in gaming clearly, to auto-generate ever more lifelike and complex scenarios that are immersive. In other words, metaverses and so forth will increasingly be populated by design elements and entire environments built through generative AI. That's great. I'm going to move to the next question. What are the most important investments technologically, platforms and tools and applications, and other investments that enterprises should be making to get the most from generative AI? Where should they start? Can they leverage their existing databases and data science tools and data engineering and model governance and so forth into this new world of generative AI, or do they have to build or buy a new stack, maybe subscribe to a SaaS-based offering to bootstrap themselves into generative AI? Where should they start? So either of you can take the first stab on this one.
I'm happy to jump in first, and we'll let Ravi, add to what I was thinking. So it's a great question, right? The technical readiness is really important to really be able to implement anything that we have a vision for. And there are a few things that I thought would be interesting to share. Number one is that it will be helpful to evaluate in terms of any organization's data journey. Because, generative AI cannot really do anything if you don't have good data foundation. It's so important to really understand where you are in terms of your data foundation. And also, the readiness of cloud, in my mind, is equally as important. The reason I say that, the generative AI is not a new concept. We've been talking about it for at least 20, 30 years. But why now? Why we're talking about it now? I feel there are three reasons. Number one is that we have vast volume of data that's collected from all different sources with images and text and sound and everything else. And two, of course, machine learning capability has vastly and fastly evolved over the past actually decades, and especially the past few years. The third thing is that the cloud infrastructure has enabled this huge computing, capability that become very elastic and cost effective for any organization to be able to do it. So those three things considered, that's why I said, well, yes, we got to have that data foundation. You got to have a good data plan, because garbage in and garbage out, we're not going to get much. But it's important to evaluate how ready the organization is in terms of the journey of your cloud. And then, of course, the AI machine learning skill within your organization is also important. When I talk about the skill, it's not just the technical skill to implement some model or so on, so on. Partially what we're trying to do at AWS is to try to democratize that, to make it simple and easy for people to adopt. It's more so also, do you have fostered a culture of data? Because everything underneath go back to data. I'm very passionate about data for years and years. Actually, that's my entire career revolved around data. And it's important to have the culture within an organization to want to harvest data, turn that data into information, insights, predictable, actionable insights, and now really using generative AI. You require those pieces coming together. So that's why I'm coming back to what I talk about, the business strategy and data strategy come in pair. I would encourage any organization, the leaders and the teams, think about what is your business strategy, data strategy? Do you have the people, the process ready to go? What is your governance model? And of course, technology. I know that you're asking a technology question, but I'm passionate about putting it all together because technology is always an enabler.
Great. Ravi, your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Jim. And Helen, you covered it very well, right? So it's about bringing the data, being able to use the data at scale, and also integrating that with everything else, and having the right skill sets and capabilities to actually unleash that innovation and kind of build out on these capabilities. So we at Impetus are actually also kind of in the same path. So our goal is to kind of enable data awareness, data analytics, and data insights for all of our customers, and we do that through a whole platform-based approach where we can actually help customers to kind of bring out, their siloed data sets, if especially they are in multiple places. How do you kind of take the data and kind of create a data lake and build the best of the kind of capabilities on top of the data lake? So all of those data investments will lead you to kind of build out better things through a data platform on which we can actually build out AI/ML applications or also generative AI applications specifically. So these are kind of early stage investments that organizations can make, and then kind of expand and scale further out. And cloud is the right catalyst for that. And like Helen suggested, there are many things that are available on cloud today where you can actually elastically increase your compute needs and kind of build prototypes and then scale them and deploy them easily with MLOps and other monitoring solutions. So broadly, yeah, I would just add those points. And also with generative AI, you will see a lot of new capabilities in terms of being able to build dashboards very easily and kind of, because it's all about creating content. So dashboards and the type of content, kind of monitoring every piece of your whole end-to-end data ingestion all the way to your models and adoption and applications.
Yeah, clearly the cloud data lake is ever more important now as a core platform for building and training and managing these models in production environments. Excellent. So let's move to the next question. How should you, an enterprise, evolve your data and analytics governance platforms? Helen alluded to this. How should you evolve your data and analytics governance platforms and practices to mitigate the risks of generative AI? So I'll ask you guys. So Helen, you want to start with this?
To put in a few words, but in fact, that's really Impetus' strong suit and special. Yeah. So I would say that the governance is really kind of tying to what I shared earlier, right? The strategy, governance, people, process, technology, and without good data platform, data foundation, you're not going to get very meaningful results. So I kind of like to think about generative AI as the tip of the iceberg. And underneath that, there's a whole slew of things. There's technology foundation, there's people process, and the governance is so critical to really pay attention to. And with that said, I really want to have Ravi to dive deeper into what they do at Impetus, because they have a really powerful platform called Leap Logic that does a lot of that. And if I may, Ravi, you want to add to it?
Oh, definitely.
Go ahead,
Thank
Ravi.
you, Helen. Sure. Thanks, Jim. So yeah, Helen was right. Essentially, this is a whole process we have kind of created, and Impetus has been driving this for many of our customers. And the primary governance capabilities are what enable you to kind of build the solutions and kind of manage them effectively through, like I talked about data lake and various other things. But at the core of it, generative AI is a kind of whole new thing, and you have to be able to understand the risks involved and anything that kind of can interfere with the kind of output it's generating. And one challenge I see is the data can influence what you do, and especially if your data is in different locations, legacy systems. The challenge is how do you kind of bring that into the platform. And one way we are doing that for our customers is through. Did I lose you, Jim?
No, you're here. We have you.
Oh,
keep going.
My screen refreshed. Sorry. So one way we're doing that with customers, especially through Leap Logic, which Helen talked about. It's a product offering. It's a solution that we kind of help our customers migrate all of their data in legacy platforms, could be SaaS, could be other forms, to kind of cloud, and this is the modern platform. So that what this helps us do is kind of find patterns and kind of simplify and automate this process. It's not a manual process, actually automated process of migration that is very effective, helps organizations save a lot of in terms of costs of migration. And once we are able to do that, we can actually now look at how to kind of build out this whole capability around the data that now exists in the cloud or on your on-premise platform. Let's say it's a modern platform. So now you can actually build in guardrails and kind of see how to kind of tackle the risks associated with these generative AI applications like Jim was asking. So one challenge I see there is being able to kind of tackle issues of hallucination, which is nothing but these large language models making up content that looks very real. And in fact, there was a case of a legal brief that was filed that was generated by ChatGPT or something like that, which looked very real, but all the citations that it was actually quoting were not fictitious. But for somebody who is not aware of that field, it's very hard to make that difference. So we need that oversight to be able to control this so that, even if the data is clean and has no bias, still the output needs to be managed and we need to see what can be done. There's also an issue of data quality, right? Because that's like I think Helen mentioned earlier, what goes in can impact the output. And on that regard, the data governance and analytics is very, very critical to this whole, generative AI through kind of enabling a close monitoring and performance tracking. And you'll also have to look at, you build an application today with a LLM. Maybe tomorrow there's a better LLM. What is the process and cost involved in switching out your old LLM? Are those easy to do? How would you kind of tackle those? So those are all questions we kind of are looking at Impetus. So there's a lot of things. It's a long road ahead, and that's what I would say.
Right, cloud migration should come first and foremost as you implement the guardrails and governance and curation of the inputs, the data that's used to train, as well as the outputs from these models in a production environment. Great. One last question before we go to the audience questions. One last question from my panel. What data and analytics skills are necessary for organizations to build and deploy high quality generative AI applications? So your skills, and really that also involves who should you be recruiting? What kind of, into what roles are necessary to stand up a team that can build and deploy and manage generative AI applications on a sustainable basis? For either of you.
So I'm happy to get started on talking about some hard skills and soft skills required for specifically generative AI. And, one of the things that, that's really important is to think ahead, right? And we talk about how do you plan, and some of the hard skills involves machine learning and deep learning and data engineering and also, basically vector deep database and generative AI framework and tools, data labeling and annotation. These are the hard skills, right? But paired with that for generative AI, there are a lot of the soft skills that's required as well, including creativity, right? Domain expertise, including responsible AI. That's kind of tying to the risk mitigation and the governance as well. And also continued learning, right? How do you really have that built in as part of the DNA of the organization? Yet we talked about the tip of the iceberg. I would say I would always want to stress the importance of data foundation. So revolving around that, it's really, really important to think about your data modernization skills within an organization, master data management, right? The governance, the security, the ETL. So at the end of the day, these are the skills that's also super important to allow you to be able to do Gen AI more, effectively. And then, of course, we talk about mindset, people, governance. These always come in as the wrapper. Without good governance, without the people and the consideration of all that, none of that will be possible. But some of the roles I want to talk to that we see could be generated, including generative AI engineer, right? AI data engineer, data annotation specialist, creative AI designer, and AI ethics, right? How do we do ethical AI, and AI consultants, and policy regulation specialists. So as much as we're trying to use this to drive a lot of automation, there are a number of new roles and opportunities that will be created.
Excellent. Ravi, any thoughts there?
Yeah, that's a great take, Helen. So definitely the overall skill sets required will completely undergo transformation. In fact, we are seeing that today with many new capabilities, like even prompt engineers, being in very high demand, and that's going to also change because the way of the overall APIs that are being created, the many startups that are offering. Even there are generative AI applications to generate prompts now. So think of this whole thing evolving, and there's a lot of capabilities that are going to be created through this whole framework. And I feel also that the overall ability to kind of manage these whole data platforms built specifically for generative AI is going to be a huge, play. So traditional ML engineers, data engineers will continue to play a very critical and central role in all of this. And being able to maintain the metadata and manage all of the whole process, for you to be able to even bring in LLMs, kind of figure out which LLMs are important, how do you kind of tackle these ethical and responsible AI questions. So all of those will kind of be very relevant. And also laws may be different in different geographies. So that's another piece. So I see having a role. So it's a combination of skills and requirements. But ultimately, it's going to be very powerful, transformative agent.
Well, thank you, Ravi. Thank you, panelists. This ends the panel portion. Now we're going to hand it to Andrew Miller to do the audience Q&A. And I see a lot of great questions coming in. So Andrew, take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all very much for that great discussion. We will jump into audience Q&A here. And I'll start with a question for Ravi. But Helen, if you do have something to add, go right ahead and do so. Okay, so Ravi, first question. Can generative AI be adopted by organizations that do not yet have a data foundation?
Great question, right? So it is actually a very interesting problem because we think that the overall data foundation is something very important. But typically, a lot of effort needs to be put into create all of these capabilities. But the goal is to start small and create a small, step-by-step fashion, right? So you have data in multiple silos, let's say, or even you have data in a central location. That's a good place to start. But the more of these modern capabilities you bring to the table, like the data lake, the mature data platform, because this platform would offer you, private security, it would offer you data governance, CI/CD capability, a lot of other things that we bring to the table. So all of these things enable you to do things. So if you don't have a data foundation, it would be good to kind of see if you can even start with the small applications like a POC that you can run with your data on specific use cases and see if that's adding benefit. And then to scale further, you can figure out how to tackle, data governance at enterprise level, how to bring all of the data together. And this is where maybe even Leap Logic can help you. And then further down the road, kind of adopt broader capabilities from various generative AI, LLMs, and other capabilities. So it can be done, but it needs a plan and buy-in from the leadership mostly, right? So essentially, it has to be a long process of kind of try out things and see if it doesn't work, try something else, but don't give up. So that's what I would say.
All right, fantastic. We'll move on to the next question here. Helen, this will be for you. So Helen, for enterprises, how does AWS promote responsible AI to ensure a high level of trust?
Yeah, I know that it's a great question that a lot of people have in mind. And it's, just kind of to get there, I know that a lot of people ask me how organization manage to, rapidly adopt generative AI. It is definitely one of the things I was going to say, thinking about responsible AI from day one is absolutely one of the key elements. So when we talk about responsible AI, we often think about human augmentation, we think about how do we remove the bias, right? Not just from everywhere, but even from the source of the data. How do we remove the bias from the data sources and from the data itself? How do we really manage the explainability on if we are using a model, why we come to that conclusion, and is that repeatable? So at AWS, we're committed to develop fair and accurate machine learning services. And in time, we have offered a responsible use of a machine learning guide to the customers. And we have experts that are specialized in responsible machine learning. We have partners like Impetus, who's actually very, very committed to really focus on the governance. And we also have a lot of education and training. It's an ongoing journey. We're all working the journey. And the most exciting thing is that as much as there is that risk, we do have ways to mitigate the risk and continue to evolve and optimize our processes.
Okay, terrific. I'll move on here. Ravi, this question's for you. How do generative adversarial networks work, and what are their main applications?
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. So this is actually a very interesting question, right? So because most of the generative AI interest goes back to GANs, which is generative adversarial networks. And these are coupled neural networks. There is actually this whole field was started by Ian Goodfellow, who actually wrote a book on it, on this work. So it created to us a way of optimizing a discriminator and a generator, primarily to kind of create data. And we've actually used it to create synthetic data and various other things. But the application is to kind of create an image that looks like the original, but not exactly the same. So what you would end up with is a version of, so you can actually generate the data by training the system GAN on data of another kind. So what the system will learn is the original probability distribution of all your original data data. What that would end up is, you would have an image that looks like the original one, or a synthetic data set that looks like the original one. It would have the same distribution, but it would be a sample. And this is where deepfakes and many of these started coming from, because you're essentially creating a thing that looks like the original, but not exactly the same. Now, this kind of led on to many other things, but the various kinds of GANs as well, the whole field has evolved quite a bit. One good use of this is what's called style GAN, which is essentially a way to kind of improve the images that are being created, and there's other variants as well. But it's a kind of a machine learning algorithm that uses optimization. Actually, it kind of tries to minimize and maximize two different metrics, so it's objective function. But it's an interesting application. So that's what kind of started the whole field of generative AI, if I can say.
Okay, terrific. Well, unfortunately, this does bring us to the end of our time today. I would like to thank all the audience members that did ask questions. I know we weren't able to get to all of them. We will get these questions out to the speakers and see if they have some time to answer you offline. But please allow me to thank our speakers. We did, of course, hear today from James Kabilas with TDWI, Ravi Shankar Valhabjausila with Impetus, and Helen Shing with AWS. Would also like to thank Impetus once again for sponsoring today's webinar. Ravi, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. All I was saying was I saw one more question on the list, which is about how does AI work with formulas? If you can just answer that as well.
Go right ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, yeah, formulas, essentially math formulas are a little tricky. In fact, it's been observed that ChatGPT originally was doing better. Now it's actually not doing as well on math. So what has happened is essentially, if you ask a question, it has to parse out the question. And let's say we can ask a question, how fast can I go to the moon and come back? So that's essentially, you need to know the distance to the moon and how your mode of transport would be, and then kind of do a computation. So it's a simple formula, right? So now there are more complex formulas, like you can do integration, differentiation, typical standard, math formulas. So there's actually a plugin that Wolfram Alpha, which is actually a really great organization doing lots of things in this space. So they actually have a plugin that you can use with ChatGPT and also other APIs supporting Wolfram Alpha. So you can actually ask math questions, and it actually can help you solve math problems. So there are guides to do that as well. Sorry, Andrew, I just saw the question. I just wanted to chime in there.
No, not a problem. I really appreciate you calling that out. Thank you for explaining that, Ravi. Okay, this does wrap it up for us today. Would like to thank once again Impetus for sponsoring today's webinar. And please remember, we did record today's webinar, and we'll be emailing you a link to an archived version of the presentation. And if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, you can locate the resource window to download the PDF. Lastly, there are just a couple days left to join us at TDWI San Diego. It's taking place next week, August 6th through August 11th. You can learn from vetted instructors on topics including data governance, machine learning, data fabric, dashboards, and more. And right now, you still have the opportunity to save 30% off your first TDWI event using promo code FIRST30. That's FIRST30 by August 4th. Lastly, from all of us here, let me say thank you so much for attending. This does conclude today's event.